All right, so we have our model. Make sure you save it. I just named mine Logan Rig underscore B01. Let's start putting the joints in. Okay, so generally speaking, I think it's best to kind of start proximal to distal, meaning from the inside out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our four panels here. I'm going to turn off texturing. That's not necessarily helpful. And let's see, we're going to go to the side view. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to do the spine, and then we will do the other parts here. So just, tap spacebar. We're now in here. I don't need the grid. One of the things I just want to show you real quick. Well, actually, I'll show you afterwards. So one of the things that's going to be helpful to have here is to actually have the wireframe so I can see it. So I'm going to click on wireframe on shaded. You could also go to shading, and there's wireframe on shaded. So that way I can see these. I'm also going to put on X-ray joints, which is this button here. It doesn't look like it's going to do anything, but if you go to shading, you'll see X-ray joints. The idea is that if I have, we're going to switch this to rigging. Okay. If I have my joints, right, if this is off, you can see when I draw the joints, I can't see them when they're inside the body. Okay. However, if I have X-ray joints on, I will see them inside the body. It just makes it so only the joints are X-ray. So you can kind of see, I can't see them here, but I put them on, then I can see them. So that's what we're going for. Okay. So a couple of rules when we are laying in our joints. One thing, we take two main things into account. One is the geometry, and the other one is anatomy / deformation. Okay, so what that means that we have to look at what the model is, right? Make some decisions based on that, and then we have to look at what our character's anatomy is and make some decisions on that, all right? So if we are making a super realistic character, we're actually not going to take the geometry into as much account. We will think more about the anatomy. And if we are thinking, if we aren't taking anatomy into a large account, and it's like supposed to be a really cartoony character, right, like a Bugs Bunny or something, then we will take the geometry more into account to make sure that it deforms better. So, for instance, if we were putting the spine in, your spine's in the back of, right, it's in the back of your body. But if we weren't worried about anatomy, then we would put it right directly in the center because that's where it's going to deform the best. Okay. Most of the time, what we're going to be doing is kind of breaking the difference. We have to take a little bit of both into account. Now, the reason why, if we were doing a super hyper realistic character, we'd want it to be exactly where it is, so that way the deformation would be equivalent to what the real world counterpart would be. But if we did that, the deformation would be as good. So we'd have to do other things in order to support the motions, the way that the model is twisting and torquing. So if you ever look at like high-end special effects, they'll actually build in a musculature and a skeletal system that slides underneath. So they'll have the joints driving those elements, but they will not actually be doing the deformation. The actual contortion will be done through using those other systems. The muscles will affect the geometry. Now, when we're doing video games, we don't really have that luxury because I'm going to just direct things more towards video games. We don't really have that luxury because you can't really have muscle systems. I mean, at some point, maybe they will. But I highly doubt that because generally people want higher frame rates than they care about like absolute accuracy. So most of the time when you're making your stuff, you probably want to somewhat split the difference. Unless you're making something cartoony, then you should just absolutely, make it 100% just towards the geometry. All right. So let's take that into account. So what I'm going to do is I am looking at my dude, and we have this guy here. I think, yeah, we'll leave that on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the spine here, actually with the hips, and then work my way up. So I'm going to go to skeleton. We'll go to create joints, and I think the default settings, just do reset tool, and the default settings are fine. So just to make sure that you are in the same spot as me. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and put this roughly at the hips. So you're going to have a root joint, and the root joint is your center joint. The reason it's called the root joint, it's the joint to which everything else is parented. It's the root of all of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this roughly in the center, kind of a little bit below the ilium here. That's your hip bones up on the top. Okay, so this is the pelvis as a whole. So we'll put it somewhere in the center of his hip. So we'll say right here. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to work our way up. Now, I'm going to not go directly in the center. I'm going to go a little bit to the back. I'm going to probably go about 3/4. Okay. That way I'm favoring, I'm taking both into account. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one, we're going to say here. And then what I want to do, it depends on how much geometry you have here. So I'm looking at mine, and this is pretty evenly spaced. So I'm going to put one joint on every edge loop. So if I showed you over here, it'd be one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, right? But if you're much more dense, then do every 2 or every 3, right? Or if you're much more shallow, then you might have to put 2. Although actually it wouldn't make much difference. You probably just want to keep with what you have. So anyway, I'm gonna take these edge loops and the center of mass into account. So I'm gonna go, we'll say here, 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 and here. Even that's a little bit too high. Really don't like the look of that actually, but yeah, we'll just go with that for now. Okay, so we're gonna go up to that point. Now the reason why, yeah, I don't like it. We're gonna undo that. I'm gonna go more into the center. We'll go here, 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 and here. That's a little bit off, but we'll move that in a second. Okay, so the reason why we're going to go only this high, I'm not going to put ones in here, because what's in here? Your rib cage. What you're going to notice is that you have hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft. If you ever seen anyone that's in like, armor, right? You're going to see they're going to have these like huge pads like in areas that don't move, but then they'll have to have areas where there's a gap, right? Look at like a crab. So a crab seems really armored, but you'll notice wherever there's a joint, that's where it's soft. And if you were to stab somebody, that's where you stab them, or in the soft parts, not in the hard parts, right? So the neck is soft, but the head, no one just stabs the head. That'd be ridiculous. You would stab the neck, okay? Don't take any of this out of context. So anyway, we only going to put joints here up to the chest, because the chest isn't actually going to deform at all. So I'm actually going to leave all that alone. Then I'm going to go up to the base of the neck, which is actually much lower than you would think. So you have your lumbar vertebrae, which are lower, right? Then we have our thoracic vertebrae, which are basically the ones that our rib cage is attached to. And then you have your cervical vertebrae, all right? And these are the ones at the top. So you have 5, 7, and then, 5, 12, and then 7. There's 7 cervical. And if you feel the back of your neck, you'll feel at the base of your neck here, you'll feel one sticks out more than the other. Okay, that's the spinous process of your 7th cervical vertebrae. So that's roughly where I want. So if you feel the back of your neck right now, you'll feel that one sticks out. That's where your neck technically starts. So I'm going to put mine right here, and we're going to put it right kind of in center. Right, then we're going to put one where I think the head would be. So the occipital protuberance, you'll feel a little bump at the back of your head right here. That's kind of the where most of the muscles attached to. I'm not really worried about that. Just thought it's fun to know. And the more that sticks out, the more you have Neanderthal in you. Mine sticks out quite a bit. So we're going to put it roughly where we think the base of the head would be, which is right here. And then we're going to put one just at the very top of the head, like so. Right at the tip. Okay, so that is an end joint. That looks acceptable. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy. One of the things that I'm having difficulty with, and you might be as well, I'm gonna click off so you can see, is that these joints are kind of hard to see, right? Because they're too small. So what you can do is, if you go to display, we'll go to animation, and we can change joint size. So in here, let's try 1.5. All right, let's try 2. 2 is probably good. Now you might find that you need to change the size of them individually as well, which you can also do. But feel free to just play around with this and get a size that works for you. Okay. You might need to make it bigger. You might need to make it smaller. But this will do it globally. The other thing to do is that each one of these also has a size on them. So I'm going to see if I can grab all of these and make them all just 2, just to make it easier. 2. One of the settings that we can also change on here, which I forgot to change, variable bone radius setting. So basically, the longer the gap, the larger it makes that. I don't really find that particularly helpful. But if you, so I'm going to turn mine off, but that's there as well. All right. Didn't mean to do that. Okay. So that looks fine. One of the things I want to do is change the names of these. So what you want to do is do one joint chain, change the names, and then do the next joint chain. The reason why is that instead of going in and individually naming each one, we can instead use modify, search, and replace names. And we're going to search for, if you look at the name, it's already got a number attached to it. So we're going to say joint, and then we're going to replace with, we're going to use hierarchy, which means when we select this joint, it's going to go all the way down. We're going to place with Logan underscore spine underscore C for center underscore JNT. Okay. And I'm going to put a 0 in there because I like to have the zeros in. And then we'll hit replace. Now what you're going to notice is this first one's going to be called Logan spine C underscore JNT. The next one down is JNT 02, 01, 04, 05. Okay. And then 6. Now, actually, I don't want these named that. So we're going to, so C is just for center, obviously. I'm going to select this one, and we're just going to go ahead and just manually change these ones. So this will be Logan underscore neck underscore C underscore JNT 01. And I'm just going to copy that, Control C, enter, down arrow, click on this, Control V, and we'll make this actually also 01. This will be head joint. Head, and then I'll just copy that, Control C, enter, obviously Control V if you're, or Command C if you're in, Command V or Control V, and this will be head joint 2. And I'm actually going to, instead of calling it JNT, we're going to call it END. Okay. And the reason we're calling it END is that way later on, I can actually search for all joints, JNT joints, for the name JNT, and select everything based off of that. And that way I don't select this. The final joint actually does not get bound to the model. We don't actually need to bind that. That is merely there to tell this joint where to get directed to. So if I hit W and I put this on object as opposed to what it was currently, you'll see that this points to the child joint. Each joint points to the child joint down the line, okay? Like so. All right, so that looks fine. So we named those. That makes me feel a little bit better. The other thing I want to do is just adjust some of the positioning here, because if you look, it's not a very clean curve. It's a little right? So what I can do is just move these. So I can take this, and you could just go, but you'll notice that it moves all the top ones, which is sort of annoying. So what you can do is if you hold insert, or if I hit D, it'll put it into, you know how you move pivot? It'll allow you to move this, but it will not affect the children, which is handy. When you're working with a joint chain, you don't want to affect the other one. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that a little bit, just so it's a little bit cleaner. That's good enough. And then I'll hit D to go back. And now you can see that's a little bit better of a curve to the back. And then this one's going straight up. Okay. The problem when you move something like that is that, I don't know if you can tell. Actually, we'll just, I'll zoom in, and then I'll hit plus, plus, plus. So you can see the manipulator here? See where the joint is? It's no longer being pointed towards it. So what we're going to do is I'll just grab the bottom one just so that it does it to all of them. You just have the bottom joint selected. You're going to go to skeleton, and you go orient joint. And what that's going to do is it's going to reorient the joints back to pointing at where they are. Now there's settings and such, but the default settings should work fine for what we're doing. Afterwards, we're going to have to manually rotate some of these. But when we get to that, I'll show you when we get to that point. All right, so now we have our first joint set. I'm just going to go ahead and put the, you can also go shading x-ray joints. Put that on there, and now I can see my first set of joints complete. Okay, so I think I'm going to end this video here. We've only done one, but we covered a bit of theory as well. So hopefully that will we'll be able to move through the other ones a bit faster.